Thank you for listening to the Speaking with Confidence podcast. Give us a review to tell everyone why you love the podcast. You can also download, like, and share the podcast with friends. Be sure to visit formulaforpublicspeaking.com and sign up for the Formula for Public Speaking course. It is a step-by-step system to help you become the confident and powerful speaker you've always wanted to be. Thank you for listening to the Speaking with Confidence podcast. Give us a review to tell everyone why you love the podcast. You can also download, like, and share the podcast with friends. Be sure to visit formulaforpublicspeaking.com and sign up for Formula for Public Speaking course. It's a step-by-step system to help you become the confident and powerful speaker you've always wanted to be. Welcome to Speaking with Confidence, a podcast that's here to help you unlock the power of effective public speaking. I'm your host, Tim Newman, and I'm excited to take you on a journey to become a better public speaker. I really appreciate each and every one of our listeners, and thank you for your support. If each of you could do one thing for me, it would be to give us a 5-star review and share the podcast with someone close to you who would benefit from listening. Today's guest, Suzanne I almost called you Goldberg.
I get that a lot. You can leave it in if you want, I don't mind.
All right. So, today's guest, Suzanne Culberg, is the Nope Coach. She helps overgivers and people pleasers learn to set boundaries and say no without feeling guilty or be a bitch. She has recorded over 400 podcast episodes. She's also known for her straight talking and wacky t-shirts. She lives in Sydney, Australia with her husband and 2 awesome children. Suzanne, welcome to the show. I've been looking forward to talking to you for a long time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Tim. I was just checking out what shirt I had on for you today. It's Houston, I have so many problems.
Oh my goodness. That's awesome. Well, and we're recording this, the day after Election Day, and Houston, we got a lot of problems. That's awesome. But again, thanks for joining us. And right before we started doing this, my oldest daughter called me and I said, I've got an interview. And she said, well, who are you interviewing? And I said, the Nope Coach. And she had no idea what I was talking about. And I told her, and she said, she started laughing. She said, that's really good. So I've already sent her a link to your website. So if you get somebody from, Pennsylvania today, I get that referral.
Thank you. Tell her to send me a message. If you go over to the part of my website that says don't click because it's for the rebels in the house, you can send me a message. And I do respond to all the messages that come in because I don't know if it's my pen pal days when I was a kid, but I think we've lost the art of actually connecting with people, putting everyone into our funnels and doing the type this word and my bot will respond to you. I was like, no, I ain't got time for that.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, hit the don't click, because, when I first started talking to you, that's what I told you I did. The very first thing I did when I went to your website, I didn't hit the start here. I hit the don't click link.
I love it.
I love the way it's set up. I think you and I are pretty compatible with how we think and how we go about doing things. So this is great. But when did you learn, or how did the idea of the Nope Coach start, and how did it turn into this amazing resource for people? Because saying no, there's many different reasons why people say no. We don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. We want people to like us, all these other things. So when did you realize that you actually had something that you could really help people?
It's actually not as a straightforward story as people would expect. So my original business was weight loss mindset coaching. Now, I never cared what people ate or how they exercise because they know what to do. They just don't do it. So I coach people with getting stuff done that they want to get done. And I originally ended up in the weight loss niche, even though I never liked the term. But when SEO, people aren't looking for mindset help. Maybe now they would be. But anyway, it's because I had my own weight journey. I dropped 171 pounds. So I used to weigh double what I do now. But anyway, I really felt passionately about body positivity and loving the skin that you're in and all this sort of stuff. So I just never sat well with the weight loss as my business. And eventually I was like, no, I need to rebrand this. I don't want to be associated with this anymore. if I never have to hear about calories or kilos or pounds or anything again, my life will feel complete. So I hired someone to help me with my messaging in my business, and I had to fill out I don't know how many forms and paperworks and ideal avatars and all this sort of stuff to try and get to the nuts and bolts of what it is that I actually do. And she was like, you really help people advocate for themselves and overcome self-doubt. She's like, you're such a yay sayer. And I was like, oh, that makes me want to die inside. Nope. And she's like, how about the nope coach? And I was like, oh, that I can get behind. So that's how it came to be.
And, and I've kind of heard your story that I'm going to want you to tell here in a second, but, that's what we do. We just say yes without thinking about it, right? A lot of times because it's kind of ingrained in our psyche, I would say for most people, it's ingrained in our psyche from a relatively young age, maybe young teenagers, maybe even before that. But, at least for me, from a teenager age group on. And then we tell ourselves these stories about why we need to be saying yes to everything.
Yeah. So in terms of that's the business side of my story. But in terms of, you teach what you most need to know so you can know it. Personally, I was raised and conditioned to be a people pleaser. And I'm sure my parents had the best of intentions. You don't deliberately often, there are exceptions, go out to muck up your kids. But we teach our kids to be polite, be good girls and good boys and don't rock the boat and make people feel good. And that messaging, I question that because making people feel good sounds nice on the surface, but what is not said is making people feel good at the expense of you.
Right.
So, if you said, hey, Suzanne, do you want to go hiking today? And I'm thinking, Tim, gosh, no. No. But I'm like, oh, Tim's asked me and I don't want to let him down and he really likes hiking. I'll be like, sure. But instead I'd be like, if I was honest, I'd love to hang out today, Tim. That sounds great. Hiking's not really my thing. What else you got? And then you can find something instead of doing all these things that you don't really want to do,
right?
And not even pausing to ask, do you want to do it? I can think of some of the movies or stage plays or things that I've attended that left to my own devices, I just never would have. And sometimes people take this to the extreme and they're like, so you're saying you never do anything you don't want to? And I'm like, I've got a great example. Tomorrow, my son, it's his assembly piece. So they're putting on a written piece that they've all written. He's in grade 3. So I'm excited to see my son, his 30 seconds of his speech. I'm not excited to see the other 99 of them.
Oh, no, I understand, yes. Yeah.
But I won't be rude. I won't get up and leave. I won't whatever. I will attend. So there are times if it's really important to the other person, I will go, hands down. But if it's something like hiking or let's see a horror movie or something that you could do without me, then I think it's time that we actually articulate that it's not for us and let go of the fact that we're letting the other person down. Because, Tim, if you really want to go hiking, I'm sure you could ask someone else. I'm not the only person in the world you could hike with.
Right. Hey, why don't you go hiking and then we'll get together, we'll have a beer afterwards and spend some time together like that. Or, whatever that is, But again, you're right, especially if it's somebody that we care about or that's important to us in some way, whether it's a personal relationship or a business relationship or what have you. We struggle with saying that no because we don't want to let them down or for whatever reason. And again, there are times that you have to do things that you don't necessarily want to do. I mean, because you just that's part of life. You have to do things sometimes that you don't want to do. That's part of being an adult and being a grown up at some points. But being able to decide what those are for yourself and make those decisions for yourself is really a learned skill.
Yes. And also to be able to communicate, thank you, I appreciate this. I love the things I get invited to. I appreciate that someone's thought of me, but it's a no from me, a no to the activity, but not a no to them or no judgment on what they like to do instead. Right. And I think that's the thing. It's healthy to have that ability to separate the no from a judgment of you as a person or the activity that you're undertaking because, like it's funny you said have a beer afterwards. I'm a teetotaler, always have been. Fascinates people. They're like, are you religious? Are you this? I'm like, no, I've always liked my calories through food, so I never got into drinking.
Okay.
But sometimes people will get so affronted and they're like, what does your husband think? And I'm like, he loves having a permanent designated driver.
There you go. Well, that's great. Again, it's whatever you develop that skill to do what you want to do without worrying about what other people necessarily think, which again is on a whole nother level. Some of that self-talk that we have, talked ourselves into.
Yes. And also the stories we make it mean. Sometimes people are just genuinely curious, or they're like, they'll be like, so how do you have fun without alcohol? Like it past me would be like, oh, but sometimes they don't. I'm like, man, I'm loose-lipped sober. I don't even want to think about what I potentially say drunk.
Well, that's a good thing. Better not have any of this for sure then.
But then again, that being said, I don't know if it would be that big of a deal because I literally just say whatever comes into my head. People find it really quite affronting, but and other people find it really refreshing because I'll be like, someone says, do you want to do this? Oh, hell no. I love that you love it, but it's a no from me.
Yeah. But I find it really, really refreshing because, most people are couching their words. They're couching what they say, couching what they think, because again, they're so afraid of upsetting somebody or hurting their feelings or feeling bad about themselves or for any of the other number of reasons. For me, most people that know me know I'm just going to say pretty much whatever I think anyway, because I don't have time to play games or, it's not that I'm trying to necessarily hurt your feelings. And if I say something, it's not never my intent, but I just don't have time to play those. I call it games, but you know what I'm talking about.
It is. It's mind games. And then you've got to keep track of your story. Like one of my biggest things, and I used to do this, say you invited me to an event and I didn't want to go. I couldn't say no because I felt rude or I didn't want to let you down or whatever. So I'd say, yeah, sure, Tim, that's great. And then on the day, oh, I'm sorry, I can't come. And now that we have mobile phones and direct messages, it's so much easier. You don't even need to ring the person. You just send them a message. And to me, in all honesty, it is so much ruder to say yes when you have no intention of going. It's especially if it's an event that they've had to cater for you or it's something, that your presence will be missed, than if you were just honest at the front end. And the other thing that happens is, say you invite me to, I always use Tupperware parties as an example. It's more of a women's thing. I don't know what the men's equivalent would be, but, you have a bunch of people around your house and you sell them some MLM stuff. Right. If I say, oh, no, next time, but I don't mean it because I don't actually want to go. Next time you host one, you're going to invite me again. Oh, no, next time. There gets to a number of next times where the person second guesses, maybe Suzanne doesn't like me. Like, how many times is she going to say next time? So they stop inviting you when Suzanne actually loves you, but she doesn't like Tupperware. Like, she's got no time for plastic. Right. So if I just said, thanks for inviting me, Tim, right. I don't do Tupperware, but if you have a candle party, I'll be there and probably your biggest spender because, I love candles, But I just think there's something about saying next time when you really don't mean it.
Exactly. And, for me, one of the biggest ones for me is if my wife wants to go out somewhere or we're meeting some people and she said, why don't you come home, do a couple things and then we'll go. And I said, you know the deal. If I go home, I'm not going anywhere. So if you want me to go, I'll go. But I'm not going home because if I'm home, forget it. It's not happening. But
it's funny.
You have to actually say that. It's not that I don't want to go. It's just if I do this, then the other is not happening.
I'm exactly the same. Once I've gone home, I'm not leaving again. Or also phrase the question. Like my kids know. If they ask, would you like to, I will be 100% honest with them. No, I don't like to, but I will, depending on what it is. Like, can you take me to my friend's place? She got a new puppy. It's like, no, I don't want to drive you over there, but I will. So it's instead, will you? And then recently they stayed with my sister. I was home alone. I had a staycation. Thank you. Shout out if you're listening to this. You're the best sister ever. And she was like, would you like to help me garden? And they both said no. And then she rang me and she's like, your kids? And I'm like, no, you don't say, would you like to? You say, will you? That's a different question.
Exactly. It's a very different question. And that goes into listening too, right? Because from a communication perspective, if we're as individuals, we're not good listeners. And if we actually listen to what's being asked and respond to what's being asked, that's like you said, that's very different than just, responding to what you think somebody else said or giving an answer that you think somebody actually wants. You're actually listening to what's being said. You think about your response to that, and then you answer intelligently.
Yeah. And I think that's the other thing too. Sometimes another people-pleasing hack or trick is you do something and play into people's sense of reciprocity. So sometimes people will send me a message and go, love your podcast. I gave you a 5-star review. I shared it on socials. Now I'm going to be a guest. Like it's just, I find that really bizarre because I have a process to become a guest on my show. You're most welcome to it, but you announcing that you've done all these things and now here's what I'm going to do in return. There was never any discussion here. It was just like an assumed thing. And it's amazing how often people do that. Like, I shared all your stuff. Now here's this thing I have coming up. And I'm like, is this in alignment with my brand? Do I even know who you are? Is this of interest to me? I just find it amazing how often people don't actually front end it with, hi, Suzanne. Like when you and I got chatting, you said, I've been to your website. I love the don't click. We had this thing. It takes a few moments, but when you connect with the person genuinely, rather than just assuming, it makes all the difference. Because some podcasts, not mine, and I know not yours, but they only take on guests who have worked with them. So if you like approach them or whatever, they're like, no, you need, or some podcasts charge, like you have to come on the show, it costs this much. Like there's a process, but so many times in life, there's an assumptive thing, like I scratched your back, now you'll scratch mine. It's like, but did I even want my back scratched?
Yeah, you started touching me. I didn't even ask you to be touched.
Exactly. Yeah, and also too, like you shared it up. It's one of my most annoyed messages I get when people say, I shared this, now can you share mine? And I'm thinking, I don't know you. I don't know what your stuff is about. I'm very choosy. Like I love to share freely if I know the person.
Right.
But, if you're selling Kagan alkalized water and I'm just like, water's water, man, I'm not going to share it.
Right. Well, go back to what we just talked about. If somebody asks you to share a beer brand, you're not going to share the beer brand because you don't drink beer. You don't know. That doesn't
exactly.
It doesn't make any sense. And if somebody takes any bit of time to get to know you, they're going to know that endorsement or that sharing, it's crap. It doesn't mean anything. It's not helping.
It's of no value to you. I don't have drinkers in my audience. Well, I might do, but
So I mean, that's the other piece of it. When you. This is a little bit far afield, but you are a brand in and of itself, right? I mean, you've built a brand. You are a brand, and if you start doing things that are off-brand, you've actually diminished your value and your business value. And people, I'm sure people realize that. Maybe they just don't think about it, and because they wouldn't do it, right? If they wouldn't do it for themselves, but they expect other people to do it for them without that process, that vetting process.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important thing. So recently on my own podcast, I started allowing pre and post roll ads that are pre-recorded. So not ones that I endorse, but ones that are just added. Right. And there's a series of categories that you can turn on and off. And I turned off gambling, politics, religion, like the things that, I don't mind how much that's pay me. It's not associated with my message, and I don't really want, because when you put something in front of your thing, as you said, if I'm like advertising Jim Beam or Johnny Walker or whatever, and I don't drink at all, it sends a confusing message to people.
It really does. And then how are they going to trust what you're saying when the messages that actually matter, right?
100%. Yeah.
And by the way, I do like the kind of the change that you did with your podcast with some of the just you talking. I listened to some of those just the other day.
So what I've done now is originally my podcast was half and half. It was half solo, like me just talking, and half guest. Now my podcast, The Nope Coach, is fully guest, and then my solo ramblings are on Patreon. So Patreon is a platform which I'm falling in love with because it gives people an RSS feed so they can get the link and put it into wherever they listen, Spotify, Apple, whatever. And then I have a real separation in my brand. So if you want my interviews, this is where you go. If you want my solo stuff, this is where you go. Mostly it's paid. It's like $10 a month, so it's not a huge amount for the solo stuff, but there is a couple of just one-offs here and there.
And again, I love that because you're giving, your followers, your listeners, the people that are, whatever you want to call them. I mean, each platform calls them different things. You're giving them different ways to consume different types of content from you, which is great. So,
yeah, and I think that's something, it evolves over time. Mm-hmm. It evolves over time. So in the beginning, I had just, my podcast, and then I really realized how much I liked interviews. And I also write a newsletter, and I'm a prolific content creator. I read something, I have thoughts, I write. And then I was like, I think I'm kind of exhausting my newsletter list. No one's ever complained, but, so Patreon gives me the freedom and flexibility to write, talk, sing badly, but share. And then people have definitely selected in because they're paying the $10 a month, and then interact and comment on those posts in a non-public way. Like if you comment on my YouTube or my Instagram reels or whatever, your mum, your sister, your next door neighbor, especially when we talk about boundaries and saying no and difficult things, whereas in the Patreon, only other Patreon members are going to see it. So you can be a little bit more direct, which is, what I love.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So when did you realize that you had a problem saying no and you weren't being a good friend, and that made you a doormat? I've heard you tell the story, and I think it's a really powerful story that people need to hear, because we don't all do it, but people that have trouble saying no find themselves in these positions all the time.
Yeah, well, when I'll share this story now, and I know you've heard it before, but the first time I shared it, I felt so awkward, and I was in a group Zoom meeting, and you see everyone's heads in bubbles, and there honestly wasn't a dry eye in the house, and I was so confused, and I said to my biz friend who was there, I thought I'd be the only person on earth who had this particular thing happen. And she's like, yeah, but the essence of what happened is what people connect with. And I think, we have different situations, but how it plays out is universal. So basically I had my oldest child. I didn't have my second kid yet, and she was just under a year old. And I went to mum's group. A lot of people, you meet up once a week with other mums with babies, and fabulous. And I met this other mum, and she didn't have a car, and I'd see her at the supermarket with her trolley or stroller, pram, depending where you are in the world, hanging all her grocery bags to it and pushing it to the bus stop and trying to navigate the baby and this pram and the groceries. And I was like, I felt so bad for her. So I said, hey, would you like me to pick you up and take you to the supermarket once a week? We go at a similar time. It's no worries. I don't mind. And that's being generous. And I think sometimes people pleasers, we don't identify as people pleasers. We're just generous. That is an act of generosity. Mm-hmm. And she said, yep, that'd be great. So I'd meet her once a week. I'd drive to her house. She'd put her son's car seat in next to my daughter. We'd go to the supermarket. We'd buy our groceries. She'd leave her bags undone. I'd tie mine. So when we opened the boot, or you guys would say the trunk, we could easily tell whose was whose without having to get all the groceries out. It was great. Did that for a couple of weeks, maybe even a month or more. And then a couple of times she'd run out of stuff in the middle of the week, and she'd give me a call, send me a text, Suzanne, can you take me to get nappies? Suzanne, can you run me to the pharmacy? I've got to pick up a script. And even then, almost still generous, because it was once a week or so, and I could have said no. And that's the thing too. Sometimes we don't even think. I was like, yeah, sure. And I felt so bad for her. No car. We called ourselves the orphans as a joke because we all lived away from our family interstate. We weren't actually orphans, but there was a group of us who had no parents, no family support, no grandparents. It's tough with babies. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I did that. And then it became every other day. And then it pretty much became every day. And then it was things like, hey, my in-laws are visiting. Can you pick them up from the airport? And you might think, oh, that's not so bad. The airport was over an hour from my house. And never once did she offer fuel, gas, petrol money. Also, never did I ask. But, I went to the airport, and then she was having her kid's first birthday party, and she said, can I borrow some cutlery, crockery, plates? We're having it at the park. Do you mind helping me set up? And then I'm going to hang out with my in-laws. Can you take the stuff home and wash it? Like, in hindsight now, I can see, oh my God, what was I doing? And in the moment, little seeds of resentment came. I was like, what am I doing? But not enough to ever speak up. And then one day we were at one of these mums group meetups again, and they had like the public bathrooms, and I was in one of the stalls, and she was at the sink with another mum who said to her, hey, I've got this something or other on this event. Would you like to come? And then she's like, hang on, I just remember you don't have a car. Don't worry about it. And she's like, oh, no, Suzanne will take me. She's my little bitch. And I overheard this in the stall. And I just remember I felt like I'd been hit. Like it was like a whack to the face. And that saying, the truth hurts, like it was a guttural experience of that, because it did hurt. I felt hit. I felt like the rash of despair. And I felt like, oh my God, does she even like me? Or am I just literally her little bitch? And then someone has asked since, who's heard this story, they're like, did you ever confront her about that? And I'm like, oh, I'd like to say, if this conversation happened today, there'd be a whole different situation. But I did ask her about it in the weeks to come, and she just laughed it off as it was a joke. And I think sometimes when our feelings are hurt and we're trying to genuinely communicate, like, this is how I feel, and people are like, oh, I didn't mean it was a joke. Like, isn't that the very thing of gaslighting? No, it's not dark.
Exactly.
But, sometimes people don't hear us, or they want to downplay it, or they don't want to dismiss it. Now, when people do that to me, because it still happens sometimes, I'll be like, well, I'm sorry, Tim, I didn't find that funny. I wouldn't even say I'm sorry. I'm like, that's not a joke to me. This is how I feel. And if people really just don't want to acknowledge and have these difficult conversations, they're not people I want to continue to have in my life.
Mm-hmm. And when I heard that story for the first time, my wife was in earshot of the speaker, and she gasped. And she said, what did I just hear? I said, yeah, you heard it right. And she actually came over and listened to the whole story again. And, we had a conversation about that. Because we get into the whole idea that, yes, we kind of like what you and I just talked about briefly. There's things that we do for people that we care about, and we take each other for granted. Those people that we care about on a regular basis, and sometimes we feel that same way. Oh, he'll just do it, or she'll just do it. I don't even have to worry about it. Just send her a text. Oh, I need you to do this, or I need you to do that, without thinking about it. And that actually started a conversation with the two of us, being a little bit more thoughtful about how we go about, asking each other to do things that we could either easily do ourselves or do in our own time frame, what have you, as opposed to just relying on somebody else to do that for us. So that really did start a good conversation.
It's such a conversation starter. So like my daughter now is nearly 12, and she's a competitive cheerleader, and her competitions, like, I pay for the classes, I pay for the costume, I drive her out every week, I pick her up, I help her train, like I do all this sort of stuff. And then when there's the competitions on, I pay for the seat, and then I sit there for 3 to 5 hours watching all these routines for my kids 3 minutes, and I'm often sweating. And then when she doesn't win, she gets in this total funk and is impossible to talk to. And I said to her at the last competition, if this happens again, I will not attend. And she's like, you have to, you're my mum, whatever. I'm like, I don't have to. I can drop you off and I can pick you up. But this is my entire day where I'm sitting in a loud, crowded, sweaty hall. Like, I don't have to do this. And she was horrified. And she actually has her next competition in 2 days from now. And I'm like, if this experience isn't different, like, you're allowed to be upset that you didn't win. You're allowed to be frustrated. You're allowed to talk about all it is. But if you sit there like, and go on and on and on, like, this is not a great experience for me, I'm not available for this. I'm not your virtual mental punching bag for when things don't go well.
Right.
And her whole thing was like, that never occurred to me. And now this next competition is right next door to where Coldplay is going to be playing. So I can't get a park. So I was like, I can't pre-book the parking. I'm like, I don't even know how we're going to get there. But then I just found out that Coldplay has a courtesy bus. I was like, let's just hop on, you and your cheer uniform. Nobody will know. So we just get a free trip out there. But I think, people don't realise the things that parents, friends, caretakers, neighbours put themselves through to be able to attend these things for you. And then you just take it for granted. And I was like, yeah, I love watching you cheer. I don't love watching the other 90 teams cheer.
Right. It's not. I don't even get me into cheer, because I've got I've got trauma from that. From my kids. Here, just a quick story. You brought it up. So my oldest daughter played field hockey, and they went on a trip to Disney World. And in Disney World in Florida, they've got the wide world of sports. So they do all kinds of travel competitions, this, that, and the other thing there. So my daughter went with her team, and my wife and I went down separately. And we get there, and at the Wide World of Sports at this time, they were also doing a cheer competition. And so we're, oh my God, there's like 4 and 5 year old girls and doing cheering. That's great, awesome. But the parents, we're not going anywhere until you put makeup on and curl your hair. I'm saying, this girl is 4 years old. I was like, phew. I said, no, I'm not doing that. And then my youngest daughter ended up getting into cheerleading, and that was, God bless her, that was so much fun. That was so much
I don't do the makeup. I made sure she joined a team that wasn't required. It's only optional. And I'll do the high hair because they have to, like with the spray. But I chose a team that doesn't have the braids because there's this one team that does this little – I'm like, I'd have to pay someone. There's no way I could do the hair like that. Getting my kid's hair on top of her head is hard enough. But funny you should say field hockey because in Australia we have hockey and ice hockey. And I love how you guys have hockey and field hockey. The first time I had this conversation, because I was like, I was like, what is field hockey? And then someone said, I'm like, so you mean like hockey? And I'm like, yeah, that's what we call it. And I'm like, what do you guys call hockey? And they described it. I'm like, oh, that's ice hockey.
Yeah. And so, and at least with us, it's guys don't play field hockey at all. It's all
really?
It's all female. I mean, there are very few. There are very, very few male. It's almost exclusively female.
Maybe that's why Australia always wins gold because we don't have to compete against America.
It's I don't know, but yeah. And
my sister was a really good hockey player. That's whichever hockey it is. That sport is fierce. Like seriously,
it is, and. It's when they're young, it's like watching grass grow, though. It's almost like softball. My again, God bless them. I love them to death, love them dearly. But watching 7, 8 year old girls play softball, gosh, you do your parent duties and love them and cheer them on and coach them up and all those types of things. But my God. It just is what it is. You just got to do what you got to do. That thank God they didn't play softball. Neither one of them played softball for very long. They got into lacrosse, which was for me much better.
Lacrosse.
I love lacrosse.
My daughter plays. She has cheerleading, obviously, but she also plays AFL, Aussie Rules Football. Oh. So it cracks me up because I'm like, you could literally do the whole thing. You could run out at halftime and do your cheer, run back in, but she plays on the mixed team too. So not just women's or girls, as you call it. She plays the mixed, and I've never seen somebody so rough and tumble. And she'll get this giant bruise, and she'll be like, "Yeah," and I'll be like, "Oh."
Good for her. That's awesome. I mean, I love it. I played rugby for a while, which I know is different than Aussie football, but the same type of stuff, and it's. I love the action. Love the violence. It's controlled violence, so you can get some of your frustrations out and have some fun.
Controlled violence. That's a good way of putting it. Yes.
It is.
Yeah. But I do, it also depends on the sport. I've never been one for, do you guys call soccer, do you call it soccer? Like, I think in the UK they call it football.
Yeah, we
that
call it
one's
soccer.
Never enjoyed me because it's so much running around for maybe one goal. I've just been like, oh, this is, but AFL, my daughter's team's really good. And I haven't seen the last few games, but they've won like 50 and 60 to like 5 and 6. And I was like, did the other team even show up? Like, seriously. So, but she's just got a competitive edge like I've never seen.
That's awesome. And I love it for kids to be able to do that type of stuff. Now, it's not a sport that they'll be able to do when they're 30 or 40 or 50, like golf. But at least they're active. They're learning skills. They're making friends. They're those types of skills are that she's learning. Teamwork, competition, communication, all those types of things really do bleed over into normal everyday life. And I think it's awesome for kids.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you're right. Strategy, competition, communication, all things that are really important. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you said something a little bit ago. You said, sorry, I don't. And then you stopped yourself. I'm not sorry. And that's something that I'd say over the last 4 or 5 months, I've caught people saying sorry, and I stopped them. I said, now hold on. Are you really sorry? Or is that just an excuse? And most of the time they say, no, I'm not really sorry. And I said, well, tell me what you actually mean and how you actually feel. If you're not sorry, don't say sorry. Right. And that's so important from a communication perspective, because, if you tell me that you're sorry, that means you're apologizing to me for something. And if you've got nothing to apologize for, then don't apologize. Say whatever it is. And from, that also alleviates some of the stress and whatever feelings that those people have from them, to get them to understand that you don't have to worry about that with me.
Yeah. It's something I was very conditioned to growing up, to always say sorry and always apologize. And it's something I do catch myself. I caught myself earlier. And yeah, I'm not sorry. Like, I'm unavailable, or I can't do this, or something, whatever. So when I do catch it, I do speak up. But I think we're conditioned to say sorry. And it's like, but we're really not.
Right.
And it's, if we're truth, or I've said, because sometimes people are demanding of an apology. Like, I want you to apologize. But I'm like, but I'm not sorry. So something I will say, it's like, I'm sorry you feel that way, which I am. I'm sorry that, we've had this disagreement or whatever, but I'm not sorry for what I said or what I did, because that would be a lie. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes, it's interesting. People will demand recompense or apology depending on the situation. So I had an example recently. My husband and I, we have one car. Mostly works because we live in the city. We're 1 hour from the Harbour Bridge or 3 hours. Sydney Harbour Bridge, depends on traffic. There's no in between.
Okay. And
he had to go into the city, and I was dropping him at the train station because I needed the car that day. And he said, I'll be home after 5. I was like, sweet. So I didn't have to pick the kids up. I had one kid home, one kid at school, and I was like, I'll record. So I was just recording my solo stuff in my own zone. Phone's off. You and I are both checking our phones were off, like face down before. Suddenly my son comes in, and my kids know not to interrupt me unless it's an actual emergency. So I was like, well, what's happened? And he said, you need to call Daddy now. And I turned my phone over, and there's all these missed calls and all these messages. And my first thought to him was, he's been injured, because he works in power, stuff happens. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I rang him immediately. He's like, where are you? It's like, pardon? He's like, I'm at the train station. I'm like, it's 2:30. We'd agreed on 5 o'clock. And when I went to pick him up, I said, I'm sorry. And I caught myself. I said, no, I'm not sorry. We agreed after 5 o'clock. And he's like, I messaged you. And I'm like, but I didn't check my phone. Like, you can see if something's been read or whatever. And we had quite a little argument that we then fixed up later. But I said to him, you're a grown-ass adult, mate. You could have called a taxi or an Uber. You could have walked. It's not that far. You could have arranged another way to get home when you realised that I wasn't available. And I won't be yelled at because I'm not there. And he apologized. Like, he's like, yeah, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have raised my voice. And he was like, yeah, I'm not sorry. But past me would have felt so bad. Oh, I should have been checking my phone. I am the worst wife ever. And I was like, no, we agreed on after 5. He changed the plan. He didn't actually, yes, he communicated it with me, but it was one-sided. He didn't get me on the phone or see that I'd responded and said, I'll be there. So I wasn't sorry.
Right. And, I'm your husband at times. If in those types of situations, I'm your husband. Like, I tried to call you. You didn't answer your phone, so it's your fault. Right. And my wife calls me on that all the time. She said, no, it's not my fault, because, again, just like you said, I didn't answer. I didn't see the voicemail. I didn't see the text message. I didn't see any of that stuff. We agreed on whatever we agreed on. And just because you changed the plan doesn't mean that I've got to drop everything that I'm doing. And so those types of conversations and back and forth are I think are universal everywhere, So, and my wife is the one that does a lot of, the real changing of the plan. So let's just say, like today, we only have one car as well. And so I've got this interview, and you need to pick me up as soon as I'm done because we have to get to the store that actually closes an hour later. So we don't have a whole lot of time because for whatever reason. And so if she's not here, she'll say, well, I decided to do something else, this, that, or the other thing. I said, well, we've decided that we really have to do this today. If it's not done today, we won't be able to do it till next week, whatever. But those types of things happen. And, I kind of chalk it up to it's our dance. These are the things that we do to each other inadvertently. And then as we get caught doing them, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I did that. And I'm not going to make it your fault. That's the other piece, is acknowledging it and not making it somebody else's fault, owning that, whatever that situation is.
Yeah. And I have my own times where I expect him to be a mind reader.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll say, it'll come out of my mouth. I'll be like, listen to what I mean, not what I say.
Exactly.
And then everyone, my kids, everyone will start laughing. And I'll be like, oh. But, we do expect, because we have this whole thing going on in our heads. Like, you meet in the morning and you're like, we're going to do this afternoon. But then something else happens for them and something else happens for you. And you just kind of assume. So it happens on both ends. But in this example, it was one where I caught myself. I was apologizing. I said, what am I apologizing for?
Right.
I said after 5. It's not after 5. I understand it's hot and you're frustrated, but, you could have got home in another way.
Exactly. So is there a difference between not being able to say no in somebody's personal life as opposed to their professional life?
That is an excellent question. Some people, there's vast difference. Like, some people in the workplace are like almost drill sergeant ability to like run their team and whatever, and then they come home and they're a total doormat. Some people at home have really great boundaries, but my dad's one of those. At home, he's like exactly right. But in the business, he'd literally give the shirt off his back. Somebody would whatever, and he would just fold. And it's interesting dynamic. And some people are just across the board either the yes person everywhere or the no person everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just an individual thing. But if you are across the board, struggle to say no, always find yourself saying yes, where I'd encourage you to start is with people who don't yet know you. So like, say you, like I used to be the type, I'll go to the supermarket. Would you like a bag with that? Yes. Would you like a corn cob? Yes. Would you like fries? Yes. They didn't have to finish their sentence. I'd just be like, yes, yes, yes. Because I felt so bad. Somebody was asking me for something. And my sister and I went to the States recently, and everywhere people are like, we don't have tipping and we don't have the taxes afterward, and it's very different culture.
Right.
But the upsell game in the States is a lot stronger than here. and she was just like, she got really frustrated. And I was like, it's their job to ask. Like, if you buy a corn cob or an extra side of chips, or you guys call them fries, I asked for a burger and chips somewhere. I got this burger and I was like, where are my chips? I thought, that was weird. And then I bit into it and it's like this crunch. And I was like, oh, they put potato chips on my burger. That's because I asked for a burger and chips.
That's awesome.
But the story is, it's their job. Like, so if you say no to somebody in a thing like that, then it for people who are such people pleasers, to you it's like, oh my gosh. But to them, they don't care.
Right.
So, and the people who don't know a different version of you don't know any other version of you. So you start to build that muscle of being able to say no or no thank you. Like all the, the people in the shopping centres, I don't know if you have them there, they have like a stall in the middle and they're selling vacation points, they're selling a gym membership, and they pretty much like attack you and then you can't get away from them. It's like, no thanks, and keep walking, and then be like, yes, I'm not sucked in to listen to some spiel about whatever it is for an hour. So start there.
And so that kind of leads into, how do you say no to, or start setting boundaries with people that you're close with? If you've been the yes person for forever, and you realize, what, I need to make some changes. How do you start making those changes without being, that person, that bitch, or that what the hell's wrong with you? Because yesterday you weren't like this, and 2 weeks ago you weren't like this. Now all of a sudden you're just telling me no all the time, and you're not doing this. You're going to do whatever you want to do. How do you start that process?
I think the most important thing is to have a conversation about it first, not just announce, from now on, I decree I'm going to do this. Have a conversation, and also make sure you have the person's full attention. So my husband's a gamer. If he's playing Xbox, I could say, hey, I want to go to Paris tomorrow. He'd be like, oh, okay. Do you know what I mean? He's not paying me any attention. That's how I've gotten away with getting a few things that I want, But, like, make sure you ask, is this, I have something I want to discuss? And depending on the person, I would say, don't worry, it's nothing serious. You don't have to panic, because we've had a lot of illness in the family and stuff. So if I'm like, there's something I want to discuss, I can just, are you sick? So we're like, no, this is not, there's nothing untoward, but it's important to me and I want to have a discussion. Is now a good time? Because sometimes it's not a good time. You've got your own stuff going on, and then someone's telling you they're going to start setting boundaries, and you're like, what? So in whatever way works for you, initiate a conversation. Make sure you have their full attention. They're not reading a book. They're not scrolling. They're not playing Xbox. And I always start the conversations with up until now, because I want to acknowledge what's happened. Up until now, I can give you an example. My daughter has anxiety. I have anxiety too. And what was happening is she was coming into my room at like 10 o'clock at night as I'm getting ready for bed, and she should have been asleep, and unloading what had happened at school that day. And then I would sit and I would listen and hold support and whatever, and then I'd get her to sleep. And then I would feel all wired because you've just listened to all this. So then I'd need time. So then I'm not really getting myself to sleep till 1 o'clock, because I've got to deal with my own emotions after I've helped her deal with hers. And I sat down with her and I said, up until now, when you've had these big emotions, that's what we call them, big feelings, and you've been coming in late at night as mummy's getting ready to bed, I've been listening to them. So acknowledge this is how it's been happening. From here on out, that can't happen anymore. And you can depend on whether you want to tell them why or not. It's a personal choice, and who the person is and whether it's relevant. So like for her, I was like, because then I don't get to bed too much later, and think, the whole household, everyone knows when I don't get sleep, I'm such a bitch, So anyway, had this thing. So what I'd like to propose instead is that you share this with me after school. Like I pick them up from school and I have the period of time. And anyway, I was like, you open for this? And she was like, yeah, okay. So after school the next day, I waited. She didn't say anything. Then the next night it happened again. And I was like, honey, we had this conversation. I have to remind, because sometimes people are like, they don't care about me, whatever. They forget. And anyway, I was like, I told you I'm not doing this anymore. And her dejected face and whatever, I felt so bad. I felt I'm the worst mum in the world. Like, the feelings are real that will happen, but, you've got to hold this. Right. Next day after school, I thought, maybe I should bring it up. So as we come home from school and I got the snack and everything, I was like, is there anything you want to talk about? And she's like, no. That next night, the same thing. And it took a couple of weeks to get into the routine, but long story short, so I don't bore you with all the details, after school she wasn't ready. It was still too fresh. It was still too raw. It wasn't the right time.
Okay.
10 o'clock at night didn't work for me. After school didn't work for her. So we found a pattern of like just after dinner, about an hour or so, so about 7 p.m. And for the first week or so, I had to say to her every day, anything you need to share now, like remind her this is the time. And now she knows, because we've established this. Because I think sometimes we have a thing in our head, this is how it's going to work. Like ideally for me, 3 o'clock, perfect. Give me all your problems. Didn't work for her. 10 o'clock works for her, doesn't work for me. See, as you set these boundaries, there's going to need to be some negotiation and also sometimes some reminding. And sometimes you will have to let people down. Like, those first few nights, I could hear her in her room, like upset. And I was like, oh my gosh, but what am I teaching her if every time I go in and just acquiesce, it's like we're not learning anything here? Another example, if you don't have a kid with anxiety, is if you have a kid, like my son had this homework project. He came in at 10 o'clock at night. He goes, I've got to build a diorama. I was like, cool, when's it due? He's like, tomorrow. I'm like, well, you're going to get 0 on that, aren't you? Because by me building the project for him, he's not going to learn anything. So his next project was the Paris Olympics, and he gave it to me the day he got it. We had 3 weeks to do it. We did it together, as in I've never been the parent who does it for them. And we built this PowerPoint presentation. Anyway, on the day they delivered it, I said, how'd you go? And he got his mark. He said, do you know how many other kids, when they hit play on the presentation, go, oh, I don't know what my mum meant by this? Like, it was so obvious the parent had done it for them. Right. I was like, you're not learning shit if I do your work for you. So, like, as he was writing this, I was looking at some of the slides and there was so much glitter and brightness. I was just cringing. I was like, I'm dying inside. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not 9 years old. So, do you know what I mean? But they've got to learn themselves and what are you available for, and they're not going to know that if you don't communicate it.
Right. And then they build those habits, and then, when they're 25, 30, 40, 50, whatever, they're still doing the same things and maybe going through some of the same struggles that we had to. And if we can stop them at, when they're young, they're not going to have to deal with some of those things that we've had to deal with.
I used to work for the government for like our health sector, and the number of kids, young adults who come in 20, 25 who didn't know how to fill out a form because they'd never had to. Their parents had done it from the whole time. And I remember handing them over. I was like, I'm not doing it for you. It's not my job. Here's the form. And I remember this one guy, and it came back and it'd be like first name, middle name. So here your middle name is your second name. So he'd put Christopher. And I was like, is your name Christopher? And he's like, no, my name's Christopher and Chris is my nickname. He didn't understand. So I'm not being sarcastic. I explained it to him. But I was like, I think sometimes when we try to help, whether it be our kids or anybody, our partner, our friends, to the point that we actually hamstring them because they don't know how to do it on their own, you're not always going to be there.
Right.
So I wasn't rude to him. I was like, oh, dude, like your second name is in, what's your middle name? Oh, so, I helped him, but he had to fill the form first and then I helped rather than me do it for because I don't get paid for that.
Right. Well, right now, my students don't know the difference between 12 o'clock noon, and midnight.
Oh, really?
12 o'clock a.m. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how that's possible, but yeah. So when I say something's due at noon, they're really thinking that it's due.
They're thinking midnight. Yes. Oh, no. No.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's what we're working with.
Yeah, but I think sometimes we don't have boundaries or we don't communicate. I'm trying to teach my son 24-hour time because my husband's ex-military, so he'll always be like 1500 or 0300 or whatever, and my kid will be like, what? And I'm like, you got to add 12 to it. So we're working on that, But yeah, like midnight versus noon. Yeah, you're 12 hours late.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even imagine trying to teach them military time. That's a whole different story.
Well, I do like that you wouldn't get confused because there's 0300 versus 1500.
Right. I'd be fine. I would be fine with it, but they'd get the calculator out and say 3 plus 12. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. They make me laugh sometimes, and it is what it is. But hopefully they learn the clock. We'll figure it out. And sometimes I'm not very
we're
nice
doing
about
the clock right
now.
Now.
My patience sometimes with that is not very much. I just can't.
I've never had patience with time. Like I've always been punctual, right on time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And my sister is not. Like she'll say, "Oh, I'll see you at 12ish," and to her, 12ish can be any time from 12 to like 1:30.
No.
And I'm like, no, you'll see me at 12. Oh, 12ish. No. 12.
Exactly. I'm the same way. I've got too many other things to do to worry about. 12ish. So especially doing these types of things. I tried to set my wife up with a calendar like Calendly, which is what we use with this, and she said, "Well, which calendar should I use to attach it to?" I said, "Well, you should only have one. You just whatever. You should have one calendar. That way, you're not confusing. You're not double booking anything. Everything comes from one place." And she said, "Well, how do you do it?" And I showed her, and she said, well, "Don't you ever get confused?" I said, "The only time I ever get confused is if I forget to put something in my calendar."
Yes,
that's it. And
I live my life by my Google Calendar, and for my business, I use Acuity, which is equivalent to Calendly. Mm-hmm. And then last week, for whatever reason, they stopped syncing, so Acuity didn't sync with Google Calendar, so I ended up with double bookings. And I was like, how did this fall? I fixed it, but I was like, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating because they automatically book each other out. So some people who still use the pen and paper calendar, like you do,
No.
but I'm like,
No way.
I can't imagine the time to erase and move and rewrite. Google Calendar, you just copy, paste, or cut. It's just
exactly
every Tuesday. I love it. I'm like, I don't understand pen and paper calendars in this day and age. No. And also it auto converts. If I send you an invite, Tim, for, this time is 9 a.m. Australian time, it will show up on your calendar and whatever your time zone is. We don't have to be like, okay, you're in Eastern or
exactly.
whatever it is.
Exactly. Well, so, the other podcasts I do, for golf, I told you my partner's in Texas. So sometimes he's 2 hours behind me. Sometimes he's 3 hours behind me. So when we try,
depending on daylight savings or not, of course. Yeah.
So, I mean, depending on who we're interviewing, I mean, it does become mental gymnastics of when all three of us or four of us are free at the same time trying to schedule interviews. That sometimes that is tough, and there's no way I could do it if it was all on paper.
Yeah, well, that's another boundary and people pleasing and whatever communication thing. So I send people my calendar. That's how I want them to book. When they write back and go, oh, no, I don't want to do a back and forward. Because also, too, say I send you an email, Tim, and propose this time, and you take 3 days to get back to me, that time could have already been gone. Whereas if you click the link, it will only show you what's available. So it's like, I don't do this. This is what it is.
so that kind of brings me to something I did want to ask you about. What's your thought on DMs? I heard
I don't do DMs at all.
At all.
I don't do any. I think DMs, unsolicited DMs, are the dick pics of the social media world.
I love it.
Like, I just can't stand it because I've never had a DM that's actually been legit. Usually it's someone trying to sell me YouTube services or editing services or something I don't want anyway. Some mass chain letter thing that if I don't respond, I'm going to end up, I don't know, desolate on an island or something. Or just someone's, it's just phishing. And it clearly says if you go to, so I have this year in 2024, I pretty much stopped using social media. I didn't delete it because I figure when you hear someone's name, you tend to either look for their website or their social. So I wanted people to know I exist as a business.
Right.
But if you go to my Instagram, for example, I have what's called a static 9 grid, means it doesn't move. And it's a series of posts which direct you to my podcast, my YouTube, or my website, because that's the places that I hang out. And on my website, it directs you to, even though it says don't click, there is contact in the footer. But, like, I'm clear. I respond to email. Like, I think the thing when people pleasing, whatever, you're like, I'm missing out on these opportunities. If somebody doesn't want to take 5 minutes to contact me in the way that I want to be contacted, like on my personal Facebook page, it says there's a sentence of something that's paraphrased. It basically says, this is my personal profile. If you want to contact me about business, go here, and it directs them to the contact page, direct, not the don't click page. The number of people who comment on that very post because it's pinned and say, check your others folder, I'm like, I will not. I've told you how to contact me and you've insisted on DMing me. No.
Exactly. And how good is that relationship going to be if you can't follow simple directions? I mean, that's, or just, because to me, that is really just simple following instructions, following directions. And if you want to have a business relationship, there's certain things that you need to trust that they're going to be able to do, right? That's just.
And there's one lady that I met in a networking, like a Zoom meeting, and I went to the thing, and she said she likes to be contacted via Instagram. And I thought, because I don't do DMs, but that's how she likes to be contacted. So anyway, I stuffed it. It was whatever. And I saw her and she's like, for you can email me. But it's funny. But I did try to honor the thing. But I was like, where did it go? Because on my business Facebook page, you can't DM me. I've deleted it. You can actually remove the option. And on Instagram, I've deleted it for people who don't follow me. Like, there is a back end way. You can't get rid of it entirely. So I'm trying to honor her way of being, and I'm a bit confused. And she's like, just email me. It was funny.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Oh man. So when you're dealing with figuring out why people have a problem saying no, is there a gender? Do you think there's a gender specific reason are females more likely to not say no for, let's just say, for feelings, as opposed to males who may not want to say no because if they don't do it, it won't be done properly. For me, at least for me, a lot of times, from a business perspective, I won't say no because I know if I do it, it'll be done right. It'll be done the way I want it done. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. I'd never made that connection before, but that's such a good point. I think, in general, and obviously these are generalizations, not everybody falls in every category. Mm-hmm. Like, not every kid who's a cheerleader also plays football. So, usually they tend to do one or the other.
One or the other, right.
But, so in general for women, it's the emotion thing. Like, I don't want to upset them. I don't want to disappoint them. Mm-hmm. I can't handle having somebody be mad at me. But for men, as you said, like, I know my husband will be like, it's just easier if I just do it myself. It's like you hired this person to help you and then you're just doing it yourself. Like, this is, or they won't do it right. And like, if I show them once and that's forevermore, and if they don't get it, they don't respect me, or maybe they didn't understand, or maybe what you said when you explained it this time, they heard in a different way. Like your 12 o'clock example, it's due by 12 noon. If you didn't know noon meant 12 p.m., and you just said 12 noon and you thought it was AM, and they keep submitting it late, you might be like, they just don't respect me or whatever. It's like, no, they literally don't get it.
Right. Exactly. And yeah, I just wonder, if as we try to transition out of being that person and setting those boundaries, how much more difficult it is to let go of whatever that reasoning is. Letting go of, it's okay, let somebody else do it and let them do it their own way, and accepting the result of that and how much easier is it or how hard is it to saying no and not worrying about hurting their feelings or me having the perception of hurting their feelings.
For the feelings one, I can tackle that easier. I'll get to the other one, but a frame that has really helped me, and I got this from Henry Cloud. He talks about hurt versus harm. So if I say no, their feelings may be hurt. That is true. That's not on me. I don't get to manage other people's feelings. But have I harmed them? It's like, no, I haven't. So I can feel much better in myself that I haven't harmed anyone, like by not going to their Tupperware party, or by not sitting through hours of cheer, or by not building a diorama at 10 p.m. at night. Like, I haven't harmed them. They're hurt because they're left high and dry and stuck and they might get a crappy grade. But that hurt feelings is hopefully the impetus for them to do something differently in future, as opposed to just, oh, mum will fix, or Suze will fix, or she's my little bitch, So that helps me a lot. I am no doubt that I hurt people's feelings just by being me. But I feel so much better inside myself than trying to do things or remember which story I've told or which excuse I've given or which version of me. So I think, hurt versus harm. This might hurt, but I'm not responsible for other people's feelings. Another thing I say to myself is offense can only be taken, never given. Like, I wasn't intending to offend them with my no. If they made an assumption that I do something that I haven't, that's not on me. If I've changed my mind, that's different. Like, if you're like, let's go hiking, I'm like, sure, I'll see you at 7. And then at 6:59, I'm like, oh, Tim, I'm not coming. Like, with 1 minute's notice? Dude, you would have known at least an hour ago, especially if you had to drive there. Like, if you were pissed, I'd understand that. But if I woke up that morning legitimately feeling unwell, or it depends on the thing. So I'm very introverted, and my friends all know that. So if we've got plans, and I make plans when I'm in an extroverted mood, and then I've had drama, I might say, I'm not coming tonight, I'm having introvert day, with hours of notice, and we haven't prepaid or something like that, as opposed to, say you were getting married or having, like, my son's assembly tomorrow. It doesn't care how introverted I'm feeling, I'll turn up because it's something important to him. But, like, if you have these things with your friends that, like, today, like, my friends always know if they've got to vent, they have to message me first. Have you got spoons? That's our talk. Have you got capacity to listen to me today? Sometimes it'll be no, not today. Try me tomorrow, because we end up, we're not at our best, and then we're listening to someone else not at their best, and then it's like the blind leading the blind, or it's like, you're starting a war within yourself to placate someone else when you have your own shit going on. So hurt versus harm helps with that. But in terms of like not doing it right, I think sometimes it's agree to disagree and decide which tasks you outsource, because like, is the way this is done, like I've got the world's dumbest example, but sometimes these work best. My husband's been in the military, so he has a particular way that he folds socks.
Well,
I
absolutely
don't like that way because I feel my socks are stretched out too much and they fall at the ankle. I like my socks done the other way. And we would argue literally for years about sock folding. So at the end of the day, I was like, I will fold everyone else's house in socks the way I fold mine, and I'll leave yours there in a pile clean, and you can fold your own damn socks.
Yeah.
So if it's that important to you, then maybe it's something you do yourself.
Yes.
But other things, is it that big of a deal? No. Does he mind now how I don't iron the sheets? Like, he used to literally iron our sheets. And he's like, I could let that one go. So, you know.
I live that. I'm also prior military, so yes, there is a way to fold the socks. There's a way to fold everything, and it better be folded that way because that's the only way it's going to fit into the drawers. If you fold it any other way, it will not fit.
That's his argument. Yes, we've had this thing, and I'm like, if it's this important to you to do it this way, then this task is yours.
Yep.
You know who? And I think sometimes it's just letting it go, because also it could be open to the other person's suggestion may be better. Like when we first moved to this house,
God, no.
we didn't know this suburb. And we used to walk to school because we only have the one car, so walk the kids to school. And we keep seeing kids in the uniform here near our house, but then when we got to the school grounds, they were already there. It's like, how are those kids getting there before we do? Like, we're not slow walkers. They're not overtaking us. Then we're like, there must be another route. So then one day we, not creepily, followed the kids, and there was like this little laneway that we knew nothing about because it's not obvious and it's safe. Don't worry, it wasn't sketchy. But it was like, oh, so sometimes someone's way, especially in business, if you're hiring a VA to edit your videos and, you like it, but then again, if you're hiring them, you could tell them the way that you like it. But also, too, how long does it take them to do the task? If I hire someone to do something for me and it doesn't take them less time than it does me, I find that bizarre. Like, it's just a personal thing.
Right. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that's but you also have to be open to having things done better than you would ever do it, which to me is, I'm working on that. I'm much better now than I've been, but that also happens when, at times you have so much to do, you can't do everything well. You have to learn to be able to say no and give things up and let other people take them. And that's, I guess it's just a learning process for me anyway. It's starting this business. I'm still working full time in my college teaching job. I was doing another side job that I've been doing for years. I love doing, and I started this. And as I'm really getting into doing it, my wife said, you're gonna have to hire somebody to do something, or you're gonna have to give something else up because you're not getting everything done. I said, I know, but I have to be the one that does this. She said, no, you don't have to be the one that does it. And, it kind of smacked me in the face about May or June. And I'm glad that it did, because that's kind of what woke me up, and I saw some other options to get some things done. And it's actually being done way better, way quicker, way cheaper than I was doing.
I think that's such a great learning curve for everyone, because there's that Stephen Covey or whoever it was, like, fit your big rocks first. But sometimes people just have way too many big rocks. Like, they might put the big rocks in the container, but they're still coming out the top. And it's like overcommitting yourself and going, which ones of these really need to be done at all? Right. And which one of these really need to be done by me? Like, me giving up DMs was challenging in the beginning, because the story I told myself, I'd miss out on business, or what if people couldn't contact me? And I was like, is that really true? Or am I missing out on a whole bunch of spammers and people who don't respect me enough to spend 5 seconds working out the way that I've clearly laid out how to contact me?
Exactly. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that, listeners should know about?
I guess the biggest thing is sometimes it can be easy to listen to a conversation of someone who's, I hesitate to use the word mastered, but mastered the skill that you want, and then think, like, I'm never going to get there. Or you try something once or twice and it doesn't work out and you dismiss it. Like, a lot of my audience are mums, and some dads, mostly mums in my audience, for young children. And they're like, I could never not have my kids interrupt while I'm working, or I could never, have my kids not do their homework for them or whatever. And it's like, well, of course, you're going to keep showing evidence for that. So the first few times that you say, like, I remember the first time I said to my children, don't interrupt me unless it's important. Like, while I'm working, and they were young, and I thought, like, maybe I can do some small things. And they're like, yeah, Mummy, okay, got it. And next thing, it was not even 5 minutes later, Tim, my daughter comes barreling in, and I'm like, is it important? She's like, yeah. I'm like, what is it? I can fit 27 blueberries in my mouth. So then we had to have a discussion about what important actually means. So now it's like bone or blood. Like, that's why when my son came in that time and he said, Daddy needs you, I thought, oh, my God, he's at the hospital. Like, because they know now. But that it takes time. It's like if we were going to the gym and you've never lifted weights and you're seeing the dudes bicep curling like 20, 50, like the big pound dumbbells, and you're trying to lift the 2 pounds off, and it's like, oh, I'm sweating already. You're not going to, in your head, you're not going to be able to do that tomorrow. Like, you understand that because you're not there yet. But when it comes to things like boundaries, things that aren't physical like that, we think, oh, I should be able to just do it. I should be able to tell them once and they should get it. If you've spent years, or hesitate to say decades, being that little bitch, and you suddenly aren't going to be that anymore, don't pendulum swing to that, because that's how you end up with like no friends.
Right.
Exactly. Because it's like, it's going to be a process. It's going to suck the first few dozen times. You're going to have to be like, and the story you're going to build in your head about what they're going to say, most of the time for most people, they're like, of course. And you're just like, the way they take your boundary, you're like, oh my gosh, wish I'd done this years ago.
Exactly.
And then we'll be the one or two, like that woman who was like, oh, it's just a joke. Who it's not just a joke. Right. And then you have to question, is that the kind of relationship I want to continue to foster? And sometimes it's hard and you will feel like you're a little bit alone for a while. But when you cut the cords, that sounds very woo, but anyway, then you have space for people come in who are aligned. And then you can foster these deeper connections.
Exactly. So where can people find you to work with you and hit the do not click button?
My website is the best place to find me, SuzanneCulberg.com. It does start here, like in the top. But as Tim said, some people are more interested in the don't click. But on my website, I literally have what I call the everything page, which has everything that I do listed out from free to paid, how much it is if it's paid, little more information. It's kind of like the hub or the directory. I have all sorts of things. I have a free podcast. I have a paid podcast. I have home study programs. I have one-on-one coaching. Like, you name it, I've got it. And if you're not sure or you want to chat to me, go to the don't click or SuzanneCulberg.com/contact. Go there anyway and send me a message. You'll know straight away. Like, talk about filtering. Chances are you'll pick the body option if you know when you see it, because that's 90% of the people who send me a message. And yeah, I will write back. I love having a chat to people about, what you found valuable from this episode or any further questions that you have.
Thank you so much. I love that you are so unapologetically you. It's refreshing. I wish that there were more people in the world like that. I think we would be much better off. So thank you so much for joining us and taking some time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim.
Be sure to visit the speakingwithconfidencepodcast.com. Oh my gosh, I can't even read. Yeah, that's being cut. Because if I can't say my own website right, that's a problem. Maybe I won't cut it. Who knows? Be sure to visit speakingwithconfidencepodcast.com to join a growing community and register for the Formula for Public Speaking course. Always remember, your voice has the power to change the world. We'll talk to you next time. Take care. I hope you enjoyed the latest episode of Speaking with Confidence. Give us a review to tell everyone why you love the podcast. You can also download, like, and share the podcast with friends. Be sure to visit formulaforpublicspeaking.com and sign up for the Formula for Public Speaking course. It's a step-by-step system to help you become the confident and powerful speaker you've always wanted to be. We'll see you next time. Take care. I hope you enjoyed the latest episode of Speaking with Confidence. Give us a review to tell everyone why you love the podcast. You can also download, like, and share the podcast with friends. Be sure to visit formulaforpublicspeaking.com and sign up for the Formula for Public Speaking course. It's a step-by-step system to help you become the confident and powerful speaker you've always wanted to be.